I decided to stop travel vlogging when I was at the tip top of my career. Hundreds of videos, dozens of countries, a few languages, and the best brand deals later, and I said, nope, I don't want to do this anymore. I'd be fun and goofy and bubbly, but when the cameras turned off, I was like, what the hell am I doing? Can I continue to do this? I had to implode what was no longer serving me.
Cue the intro, sis.
You know she's not your average Joe, not your average Joe. She's not your average Joe.
My life is marked by people packing and unpacking suitcases. Whether it was us when we first moved, or it was my grandparents coming to visit, bringing their language and culture with them. I was always fascinated with travel. I was always fascinated with language. And as a kid who was born in a country and then moved to another country where I was so different, it was not this vain thing like, I want to travel, I want to check things off a list. Travel to me was a part of my story. It was a part of the pain that separated me from my relatives back home in Brazil. I grew up without really knowing home. And when you grow up without knowing home, not only do you become an in-betweener of cultures, of languages, of understanding of identity, but it also opens up this huge, beautiful opportunity. What if I can travel around the world? What if I can learn more about places that I didn't even know existed? What if I can learn more about people, about myself, about connections? And that was the motivation, and it still is the motivation of travel. Then something crazy happened. In my early 20s, I decided to start a YouTube channel with a college buddy. We really started it from nothing. I came from an immigrant background. He came from a background where he always wanted to do more, strive for more. And so we bonded together in this hope of, let's see the world, let's do what we can. And it became something bigger than either of us could have ever imagined. It was extraordinary. My 20s are all documented in these beautifully edited videos that I filmed and edited, that we filmed together, edited together, and overall just like became my career. And after 7 long years of filming everything, of taking trips for the videos, documenting every single moment of importance in my life, I started to feel some type of way, and it wasn't a good way. It was a, what am I doing? Why am I only in front of these monuments to make jokes or booty drop and not learning about the history of the place? Why am I not investigating why things are the way that they are here? I felt travel vlogging was surface. I felt like you can't really say you know a place if you've only gone for 3 days. And so even though when I started realizing that, I started trying to change what I was doing. I would spend a little bit longer time. I would go back home to Brazil. I would find meaning where I could. It just wasn't connecting with me anymore. And also, to be honest, when you start doing something when you're in your early 20s and you're 28, by the time you stop and think about what you're doing, you can hope that you've evolved. And if you haven't evolved, then I don't know. But I definitely was evolving. And the only reason I knew was because of the pages of my journals. That was how I knew that something was off. Because when the cameras turned on, I'd be fun and goofy and bubbly. But when the cameras turned off, I was like, what the hell am I doing? Can I continue to do this? The travel vlogging career was incredible, but it took me away from family. I couldn't have any relationships. I couldn't build any kind of life for myself because my life was built on leaving. My life was built on going to get the content, and it was very successful. And by the end of the journey, I was sipping champagne first class with my business partner being like, we've accomplished ridiculous things, but I wanted more, and I had to implode what was no longer serving me. At the time, I then auditioned for a Netflix show, and this show was completely out of my comfort zone because it was being a TV presenter. And instead of vlogging myself and editing myself and calling the shots, I would now be a presenter on a show that became gigantic. And it was 2 seasons. It was 16 Netflix big leagues episodes, and I was the extra host. They had real estate, they had design, and then they threw in my wild card character, travel and culture. But this is a show about houses. And so when you're filming a show about houses and you're the travel and culture host, you gotta pitch your ass off to get the segments. So I started thinking like a producer. I was like, okay, well, we're in this polished luxury building. There might be no travel or culture, but what about functionality? What about this historical moment? And so I would pitch my own segments, and this lasted a year. You're working 6 days a week. You're traveling every 2 days. You're packing and unpacking your suitcase. The most influential part of that experience wasn't that I was seeing the best places around the world. traveled, which was pretty damn cool, but it was actually working in a team. And after a 7-year career travel vlogging, working with just me and a business partner and pretty much out on the streets, filming myself, editing myself, doing everything alone, I went from that to a 15-person crew. And this is when everything started to change for me. It was when I saw the power of that teamwork, when I saw like, oh, this is what it's like to collaborate with a producer who loves story as much as I do, or this is what it's like to film with somebody who loves getting the angles that I wouldn't even be creative enough to think about. This is what it's like to create a package with the editor. Immediately I was like, I want to do this. I want to make shows. I don't want to just travel vlog. I want to think about a bigger story with a team of passionate, motivated people who can turn something that I thought into something even better. So around 2020 is when I realized I couldn't go back to travel vlogging the way that I was doing before. I wanted something bigger. I wanted collaboration. I wanted to work with people that could make something bigger as a group than singularly. I knew that there was a knowledge gap. I knew that all I knew had been run and gun, film on the street, which is really good, and I knew how to edit, but I didn't know how to build a serialized show. This is when I decided to enroll in film school for my master's, a plot twist in my journey that I never thought I would do. It's a negotiated program that I found with Braindance and De Montfort University. It's this alternative program. I'll link it in the show notes. But essentially, you create your own final project. And my final project was, I want to make my own travel docuseries around languages. I want to pitch executives in different streaming platforms or maybe different platforms in general, because I believe that I can be a showrunner. And a showrunner is a person who understands the business of shows and also the story. And you create your own program. So you basically assign your own reading, you do your own case studies, and you decide your artifacts, AKA your final projects. So I started this 2-year program, and my final project intention was a pilot for my travel show. During these 2 years, what I've been doing is breaking that down into smaller steps. So creating a show Bible, creating a lookbook, creating episode beat sheets, and it's been a blast, and I've been doing that on the low. At the same time, I founded my company, Joe Club, the journaling club, which has been a beautiful experience and transition in my life. One of the main problems with travel vlogging, in my opinion, was that it almost felt too selfish. It was like the benefits would end with me. I would get these amazing trips, I would travel and see these incredible things, and I would document them, and I would sit and edit and craft them into stories and share them online, and people would travel vicariously through the videos. And sometimes my favorite part was that it would inspire them to take their own adventures. But to me, the impact wasn't direct enough. It was too, look at me and my awesome life, don't you wish you could have this too? That was a missing piece that I didn't know how I was gonna fix. All my life I have journaled. I've kept journals from way back when. And I initially started journaling actually because I never thought I would be lucky enough to travel again. And so if I were traveling, I wanted to capture everything, the tickets, the memories, the tiny laughable moments. And then journaling just continued to be a way of digesting my life. The pandemic hit. When I was in the middle of my Netflix show, I had this huge oh shit moment because I wasn't sure the Netflix show was gonna continue. I didn't have a successful YouTube channel anymore, and I didn't know when I could travel again and do what I had done for the last 10 years that was very successful. So what did I do? I started sharing my journals online on Instagram because that's something that I could see myself doing for the rest of my life that I had done up until that moment. And it turned into this amazing journaling challenge that I did for 90 days, and around day 70, I asked myself, like, would people want to journal together as a community online? Next thing you know, I'm journaling, pouring my heart out with a bunch of brave strangers online, and we're having this jam session of ideas, of emotions, and of tangible actions that come from introspecting as a global group. And this is when I was like, wow, this is checking all the boxes. So Joe Club was born. I started hosting live journaling sessions, created a format from scratch. I couldn't go back to YouTube travel vlogging. I just couldn't anymore. I'm like, there needs to be something else. Like, there needs to be a bigger vision. And then I had this crazy idea, like, why don't I create retreats for my journaling club? Because that would connect the dots that I feel like hadn't been connected before. I would get to travel the way that I've always traveled, going into the dirt roads, meeting locals, building relationships, but I would get to design experiences for other people that may never have gone out of their comfort zone like this before. And so I started doing retreats. did the first 2 in Croatia, then Mexico, then Italy, then Greece, then Belgium, and I started hiring facilitators from around the world. I hosted retreats for them. I've done 9 retreats since the beginning. So then I kept traveling with the same DNA of learning about people, the world, myself, but this time I was doing it with strangers, and these strangers became great friends. They're a giant amount of work, but they've really changed my life. I hired my first full-time employee because I met her after 2 years of working together at a retreat. I introduced people to friends that have become their confidants for life. There's so much good that came from retreats that I felt like travel vlogging couldn't even begin to scratch the surface of. And the irony is that a lot of the people who came to the retreats, they didn't even know that I vlogged. They didn't even know that I had this 7-year career. And so I started seeing that you can make an impact without sharing every single little detail of your life, which brings me to the next point of the truth about when you get older. Personally, I don't know if I'm the only one. Please let me know if you're watching, if you feel this way too. As I got older, I wanted to preserve the goodness in my life for myself. I wanted to keep the relationships that I feel are the closest close to me. And I didn't want to turn my whole life into content, because then when do you turn off? I took my first vacation in Portugal last summer. That was a true vacation where I was off the grid for 6 days. 6 days, that's all I could afford, honestly. I'm like, damn, I've traveled all around the world, but none of it was for holidays. And that's also a beautiful thing. There's a beauty to never really having to take time off because you love what you're doing so much, but like, can my brain get a little bit of a break? And I'm living in Belgium, a country that I had never really spent time in, that I never anticipated living in. And here's the wildest part of all. I have been documenting. I have hundreds of gigabytes of footage from the last 6 years that I haven't put online because I want to tell a bigger story. And if that means pausing and focusing my energy on other things like growing my business or long format shows, then that's what I'm gonna do. And so make no mistake, I'm not done traveling. I'm not done telling stories, but the way that I want to tell them is gonna be a little bit different. And I just wrapped up a really exciting project that I believe is gonna be the future of how I travel and document. And it's gonna be good. So I guess this is a story about change. This is a story about being aware and accepting that we change, that how we want to live our lives can change, and that even if at one point that was your wildest dream, maybe that changes. And when it changes, you got to be brave enough to walk away from it and honor that chapter and know that it was beautiful, but be brave enough to go into the unknown, and go into the unknown because you know that there's something there that's waiting for you that is so extraordinary. You're not even aware of how good it's gonna be. I'm going into the unknown again. I'm excited to get to know you. I'm excited to share, but in a different kind of way. And most of all, I'm excited to collaborate. I'm excited to work with people who love to tell stories, who love travel, who love language. Thank you for being here. If you're new here, please subscribe. If you've been with me since the beginning, thank you. If you wanna know about any upcoming retreats or wanna hang out with me in my journal club, you can check the description box below. Also, if you're here, please let me know, how did you find this channel? Are you here since the beginning? Are you here from a language learning ad? Where are you here? Are you here from Joe Club? Are you here because you joined a retreat like a crazy person and realized how dope it was? Let me know. I'm still figuring out what the next chapter is, and I guess that's the whole journey of change. You go in blind, honey, because you don't really know what's happening. But at one point you wake up and you're like, damn, I can't believe I got through that. I feel like I'm finally at the point where I'm like, damn, I can't believe I got through that. I can't believe I got through all of this change, and I'm better for it.
Linda, meu amor.